evening. On this Friday, April the 20th, you're watching the VSB TV 11 News. I'm Kristin Martinez. The news that Cedar Bridge Academy has been undergoing disciplinary problems that have escalated to the point of teachers being punched and knives being found on unruly students deeply concerns Shadow Education Minister Dr. Grant Gibbons, and he hopes the government is keeping its eye on this particular ball.
The idea that students are bringing guns into our public schools is a very, very concerning issue. And I think it speaks to the need to make sure that there is sufficient security in place, not only for students but also for teachers. And we need to do obviously a lot more education in terms of just the dangers of guns and violence at a school level in this community. And I think I look forward to hearing what the government has to offer to address what are now very different challenges than we had to face a number of years ago. But it's something we need to look at very, very carefully, because there have been enough instances in the United States where obviously guns are more available, where there have been serious and very tragic consequences at schools and indeed colleges as well. Obviously we hope that nothing like that would happen here, but I think we have to make sure we have the appropriate security and steps in place to avoid that.
Lorraine Smith took a stand in her own defense in Supreme Court this afternoon. She stands accused, along with her sister, Audra Ann Bean, of swindling her 87-year-old grandmother out of $500,000. She told the court that she transferred the money into her own account to keep her father from getting his hands on it. Bermuda is to investigate allegations that the Bermuda-registered Star Princess ignored appeals for help from a stranded fishing boat, leaving it to be found 2 weeks later with 2 of the 3 crewmen dead. The incident happened off the coast of Panama when passengers reported to the crew of the giant liner that they had spotted a boat in distress with men waving their shirts to attract attention. It transpired that none of the crew informed the captain or the officer on duty of the sighting, and the ship sailed on. Transport Minister Derek Burgess told Parliament today that Bermuda has an obligation to look into the unusual tragedy. Parliament spent much of today debating amendments to the Parliamentary Election Act, which Premier Paula Cox said in her introduction was a further step in strengthening democracy in a community that was once divided between the haves and the have-nots. Shadow Justice Minister Trevor Moniz said the OBA welcomed the changes and in fact wished they had gone further.
From 2003 to 2012, nothing has happened. Now we see these changes being brought forward, and we praise the Premier for that, but in our view they don't go far enough. The principal thing is they allow the registrar to move people easily from one constituency to another to make sure they're voting where they're registered, so you don't get too many games played. We think the requirement on the registrar should be mandatory. It should require him to do it as opposed to being permissive, and we believe there should be further changes. We think the advance poll should be required to be over a longer period of time. Here it allows it to be over, rather than being on one day, the advance poll can be over 2 or 3 days if you're going to be out of the island. We think it should be required to be over that greater time, and perhaps even more, perhaps a week.
Because there were some genuine corruption going on, which I know disturbed your party.
Well, the position is that we take the position that between 5 and 10% of voters are registered in the wrong constituency. And we know during the last election that there would people were put in government housing in Warwick, at St. Esther, and in St. David's, and it appeared to be a pretty deliberate move to bolster those seats politically. And that we know generally that there are games being played with people being registered. You come across stories, as I have in my constituency, of people who live there but are registered with some family member in a marginal seat somewhere else. If you complain, nothing happens. We've put in lots of complaints to the parliamentary registrar. Nothing happens as a result. No action is taken. It's a very serious issue because marginal seats in Bermuda are won by as few as 7 or 8 votes. So it makes a huge difference.
The concept of the regular soldiers of the Bermuda Regiment manning the island's Marine Patrol boats at a cost savings of $500,000 a year has now become a reality. Minister of National Security Wayne Parentchief told Parliament that 2 years of discussions had led to the signing of a memorandum between the police and the regiment, and that training had already begun. From what Dr. Grant Gibbons had to say, the idea has the support of the opposition.
the Ministry of National Security talked with the regiment CO and the Commissioner of Police, asked if they could get a memorandum of understanding for the regiment to man the police boats. And of course the regiment does have their own smaller craft, but they've actually now had enough talks where it's become feasible to have a regiment unit which has a full-time maritime responsibility, 24 hours. And that'll be about 25 men. It'll be at approximately half the cost if it were to be manned by policemen. And some protocols will have to be changed. As it stands now, it's a joint effort with the police and the regiment. Eventually the regiment will take it over entirely, but that'll be not until at least the next fiscal year.
After training
after training's taken place and after we find some budget.
I was trying to get a sense of how long it was likely to take to achieve some of these, I guess, financial savings by using the regiment as opposed to the police, and whether we were talking about a year or more. I think the initial comment that the minister said was that they would, first of all, be using the regiment soldiers, and he was talking about full-time soldiers, not conscripts, because I wanted to clarify that, with either the Parks Department or police there, so both of those have the powers to be able to fulfill some of these functions. But he indicated that perhaps something on the order of next budget year, which would put it past April of next year, would be the time for the full-scale handover of the Police Maritime Division to the regiment. But as I think we tried to elucidate, there are a number of things that have to be put in place before that can actually happen, and we were trying to get a clear understanding of what those steps might be.
From all of us here at VSB, I'm Kristin Martinez, and have a good night.